Algiers are an American band from Atlanta, but their drummer Matt Tong is British. The other three members of the band are all multi-instrumentalists. They were formed in 2012 and have released 4 albums so far. Hi, my name's Dan. So this was the second album by Algiers. It is my first encounter with them, so I've never heard the album before. There are various labels that I've seen applied to this album, but the best description I've seen is dystopian soul. Let's try and dig into that. So normally when I do an album, I seem to focus on like the music, the instrumental stuff, then the vocals, then the lyrics, and give an overall impression. Unusually, I'm going to start talking with the vocals here because this is quite an important part of the sound, I would say. So the thing that I read about this described this as afrofolk. I've not come across that term before, but I can kind of see what that might mean. And this is in two ways. It's about the style of the singing, but also the content of the lyrics somewhat, I think. So it reminds me of kind of my nearest reference is a song called "I Need a Dollar" by Aloe Black, which was I can't remember when, 10 years ago or something like that, maybe less than that. And it has this kind of African American sound, which is in some ways reminiscent of chain gang songs and spirituals and some soul. I'm trying to tread carefully around this because I know that there are difficult parts of the history of African Americans in America, but it has that kind of, yeah, saying that it's African American folk maybe isn't quite right, but it's kind of is heading in the right direction. It's the vocals are belted out, and they're actually often deliberately distorted as well. There's at least one track that has gentler bits, but generally it's this really strong vocal sound. It's this kind of sound that, in some ways, I associate more with female soul singers, people like I'm going to say Aretha, but Aretha doesn't always blast it out, but she has this ability to. But this guy, I've got his name, Franklin James Fisher, really does blast it. It's very strong and strident vocals. It's intense and quite serious. He's a pretty good singer, and it's a great sound for his voice. Sometimes it feels quite emotional. Would I apply the term emo to it? Probably not, but that's because maybe I'm not comfortable enough with emo. So maybe almost, but it's certainly very engaged, which is kind of the opposite of, sometimes you get vocals that are dream vocals that are very disengaged. This is very kind of uh, intense, and I would expect that live this band would be really quite an experience as a result. Um, so the backing is backing that up. It has this kind of industrial feel, somewhat experimental at times. There's bits of noise. It's kind of electronica, maybe, but maybe not all of it. There's overdriven stuff. There's echoey reverb, which gives it a distant feel. It's deliberately dirty in sound and feel. So I'm not. I want to avoid kind of calling it lo-fi because it isn't that it's been recorded using cheap equipment or sounds like it's been recorded using cheap equipment, but it does give the feel of being recorded in a big empty warehouse. So it gives this kind of echoey distance to the whole stuff and a kind of, the use of distortion as well and other things just gives it that kind of, it's not a clean, snappy sound. It's more of a big, deliberately mushy sound in some ways. Clearly, there's some samples being used here, and it's quite loop based, like some electronica. But the thing that's different to it is this kind of echoey, dirty sound, which is unlike most electronica music, or that has that kind of thought behind it. It tends to have a very clean feel, so this doesn't. So it's quite different. Um, it includes some drum machines and percussive loops, obviously. I don't know how much of this is loops. I don't know how much of this is them playing something and then looping it. I don't know how much of it is taken from samples. I suspect most of it is sampled from themselves, but some of it is fairly clearly kind of sounds more drum machiney than a drum kit that's been then looped. Um, there's also some big distant backing vocal stuff. Again, more reverb to make them sound further away, and but kind of pad-like vocals in there. There's even so. I picked on one particular track here, which is probably pronounced Madame Rieu. It's MME, which I think is the French concatenation abbreviation. That's the right word for Madame. So this is kind of based around a piano, so you kind of think that's less industrial and less electronic. But although the piano keeps going, it has this kind of um, production to it that I've been describing, and it's got atmospheric and noise elements that kind of creep in as well. So the whole thing and the end result is it's got this kind of it feels quite menacing. It's certainly quite intense, but I found it engaging. The songs about I'm not sure, but there are definitely some religious elements to some of the songs, and that kind of ties with this kind of Afrofolk idea, I think. So it's unusual, but I enjoyed it. It's quite a nice one. So that's what I think, and I'd love to know what you think of this album. So please do share your thoughts in the comments. The next album is on this channel is going to be somebody I've referenced here, which is Aretha Franklin with the album Aretha Now. That's it from me for now.
She always standing on a ledge atop the landing, and we